Welcome to this Advent study, a digital resource that we have prepared for you, no matter where you are, no matter where you're watching from. We're just excited that you're joining us as we think about and talk about this Advent season and what we're calling an honest Advent. My name is Joshua. I am one of our pastors here at Resurrection, and I serve as our lead director of adult discipleship. And I'm here with some amazing people who serve here at Resurrection. Yeah, especially you, Susie.
Thank you. I'm Susie, and I am the location pastor at the Overland Park location.
I'm Shannon. I'm the location pastor at Resurrection Liberty.
And I'm Robert Johnson. I'm location pastor at Lee's Summit.
Robert had to think about that for just a minute.
I did. I was like, okay.
Because you guys just opened up your location not too long ago.
We just opened up our new location, yeah.
Pretty amazing.
October 5th was our grand opening.
Yeah.
Actually, it was like our third grand opening, but we won't
go there.
We'll leave that alone, yeah.
Susie and I, we served together for a while at Overland Park. And Shannon, you and I, we've been here for a while. We've been on staff for a while and good friends. And we're excited to welcome you, to invite you to be a part of this study. We've been preparing really a journey and a conversation that leads us into conversations that help us be honest about Advent, this busy, chaotic season that we find ourselves in that prepares us for Christmas, the arrival of Jesus. And what we were hoping was that we would lead a conversation. We would invite you into some insights, no matter where you're watching from. So you might be watching this from home, in the quiet of your home. You might be watching this with a friend, or maybe a part of a group or a small group. And we were hoping that this would be a great resource and tool for you. Here's what we're hoping to do in this Advent season. We want to help you experience the wonder and the joy of Advent, despite the chaotic, busy lives that we all lead. And that's a part of what Honest Advent is all about. It helps us to get beyond kind of the picture-perfect, everything is set just right, the tinsel is glimmering just right. Like, it gets us beyond that to real life, honest conversation. And there's something amazing about the Christmas story that helps us do that once we get beyond kind of the pageant-looking feel of the story that maybe sometimes we put into it our own selves. So we're following this book, Honest Advent by Scott Erickson, and it's a great resource. Know that you can also download a study guide on the website. I'd encourage you to do that, especially if you're studying along with a group. And this word Advent, it's a really important word for us. It's this word that comes from the Latin adventus, meaning coming or arrival. It's all about the anticipation, the arrival of Jesus into our world 2,000 years ago, but with so much relevance for today. So I thought I'd begin with a question and get us talking. What do you all remember about being a child and the sense of wonder and anticipation that you had growing up preparing for Christmas?
Yeah, so, a lot of people, you just couched this, as a child, but I'll just be candid, I still have a lot of wonder around Christmas. I'm being serious. So, at my parents' house, I'll just tell you what, my stocking is empty on Christmas Eve, and I might still believe in Santa, because on Christmas morning, that stocking's filled. And, I just still love the wonder of the season, and that carried over not only as a child, but into adulthood. So, honestly, I still have a lot of wonder around it. I know that's not the exact question you were asking, but for me, that childlike wonder is kind of translated.
Yeah, that's great. That's good.
Yeah, and for me, anyone who knows me probably sees they see this kind of anxiety, anxiousness in me. Impatience is probably, that's a defining attribute of me, and it manifested. It showed up around at Christmas time because of my five siblings, the five of us. I was the one that couldn't wait. So starting a month out, I was begged my mom every day to tell me what was I getting for Christmas. And then, just the whole anticipation of the day. I believed in the whole magic of it. On Christmas Eve, I swore that I saw Santa flying in the sky and the star moving and all of that. So it was just that kind of excitement and anticipation and believing in the magic of it all. And so, and with the impatience, not being able to wait to Christmas morning, being the first one up on that morning.
I could see you, like the first one up, getting ready
That
to
is
go
that is
open
so
presents.
Robert. That is Robert. Yes.
And I've seen Santa in the sky too, so I don't think you're wrong.
Thank you.
I think you're right.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes.
Well, it's been a minute since I've experienced Christmas as a child. I've been a mom for a long time, and so I think it's a great opportunity when you have kids, and my kids are older now, to experience the awe and wonder through what they are experiencing and the excitement and the buildup. And when you think about Advent is waiting and anticipating, that starts so early. And my daughters are already asking me, when are we putting the Christmas tree up? So it's fun to be able to relive some of that excitement through their excitement.
Yeah, I can relate a lot to that with little girls at home. Ada, almost 5 years old. Elsie is now 1, and just like seeing Christmas through their eyes, it takes me back to when I was a kid. And I kind of, Robert, like you, I was always the first one up, and I would wake up my sisters. Shocking, right? Yeah, shocking. And so there was that anticipation and sense of wonder coming down and seeing the tree filled with presents. But I would try to find those presents wherever my parents would stash them, in the house.
Surprise.
I couldn't help myself. I was just way too excited. I wanted to know, what am I going to get for Christmas? And
Couldn't wait.
yeah, could not wait. It was well, that's just who I was. And
Oh, my parents found me out because I would open them and then rewrap them. And then at Christmas, yes, they would say like, you already opened that, didn't you, Shannon? Because I'm a big like receiver of gifts, and I'll be like, oh my gosh. And I'd open something and be like, oh, that's cool. And they'd be like, you already opened it, didn't you?
One way to solve that is to not wrap anything until the last minute. And it doesn't give them the opportunity to open it up.
I think many of us can relate to this, right? This sense of wonder, and maybe it was from a childhood, or maybe seeing it through our own children, or maybe in friends, family, gathering with other people. And like that sense of wonder just comes alive in this Advent season, or we hope it does. But it seems like there's something that changes for us maybe as we become adults. Maybe it gets a little bit harder to live with that sense of wonder, and like the twinkling lights fade. The story that we hear doesn't seem to relate as much to real life, or the story that we read in Scripture, and it becomes a pageant, and our kids act it out, and like maybe it just changes for us as we get a little bit older. I don't know, that's part of why we wanted to talk about Honest Advent.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason, so I've been drawn to this book for several years, and then brought it to this conversation. And Scott Erickson actually sums it up really great in the introduction to this book. He says, this, meaning this study and what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks, this is an exploration of finding the God with us coming into our midst now. What I believe is that the essence of Jesus' incarnation is hiding out in the mechanics of this life, the one you're living presently. That yes, we can look to candles and songs and pageantry to help us connect to the divine, but we can also look to pregnancy, biology, history, and mystery as sacred meeting places with the incarnational Christ. Yeah, it's powerful.
It's this whole thing about God entering our humanity, entering our brokenness, entering the human experience, entering the things that we encounter on a daily basis, and becoming a part of that incarnation. Right, Susie?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what Advent means, or incarnation, or some of the terms that we're used to. So I was trying to break it down for someone the other day and said, incarnation is God becoming human, fully human and fully divine. And along with Jesus coming as a human and as a baby, he had the vulnerability of humans, the doubt, the fear, the capacity to suffer even. And I think that's interesting to think about all these years later, and then what it must have looked like 2,000 years ago. Especially, I think about Mary and how scared she must have been, and confused, and then wondering how Joseph was going to take it. And then traveling, can you imagine traveling so far when you're about to give birth, and trusting what the angels said? There's a lot, I think, of vulnerability just in the beginning of the story.
It's the best part about the whole story to me. Just how human it is. I mean, a teen girl who has an unexpected pregnancy and is facing the social stigma of that. a man who's white, a bride to be, has this understanding, and he can't explain it to the brothers on the block.
Right.
Just
how do you
right.
begin to
How do you
explain
explain this? Yeah. You know, just it's such a human story. And then this young girl who gets this beautiful gift from God, but she can't explain it to the people around her. It makes no sense to anyone. I mean, we're all like that, right? God does things in our lives that we can't explain to people around us, and they just don't fit with what people know about us. It's such a human story, which is why I love the Christmas story.
Let me ask you all this question. What does vulnerability look like for you today? Like what does, put yourself in that story. What does vulnerability look like for you?
Well, I'll keep bringing the mom part into it, but I think vulnerability, especially at Christmas time and Advent season, looks like being able to admit to myself and to other people that it's not all going to be perfect. If I get 100 Christmas cards out, then chances are I'm not going to be able to make 12 dozen Christmas cookies, and my house may not look perfect. But if I'm creating experiences for my kids and for our friends and at church, then that's okay. But it's a vulnerable place to be when you feel like you've got to be doing everything picture perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, for me, again, I go back to the Joseph story. I think Joseph's part of the story shows it's kind of like what vulnerability is for men in period. I mean, his wife to be, has a pregnancy that cannot be explained. So the shame of that, the public shame of that, but then he's also vulnerable to his love for her because he decides not to treat her as the law might call for, but to put her away quietly. And I think that plugs into men's vulnerability. We're afraid to ask for help. Sometimes our sense of ego and our competition with other men, that we don't want other men to know that we have weaknesses, that we're struggling with things, particularly during this holiday season when a lot of men struggle with depression. It increases because I can't afford to do for my family the things that other men, the vulnerability of that. And so that vulnerability shows up in so many different ways for men, I think. Yeah.
I can relate in a similar way, and maybe it was like most pronounced to me as I was holding my little girl, my firstborn, first time. I can't tell you I held too many newborns before that point, and like you hold this newborn baby for the very first time, and at least as a dad, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I have this little baby in my arms.
And she was so tiny.
She was so tiny. I hope I don't mess this up, and like you yourself feel this certain sense of vulnerability as you're holding such a vulnerable little child, and like all those things hit me in that moment. Am I good enough? Can I do this? Like, can I be the dad that this little baby girl needs me to be? And we all experience it in different ways. I don't know, Shannon, is there anything, like, how would you think about that?
Just playing into, like, we often think of, like, the story of Jesus, so this, like, ancient story that happened, and that birth was totally, we think of all the circumstances that surrounded it and how, like, crazy that feels, but yet, like, modern day birth is still, like, a risk. And I mean, I've only given birth once, and it was like 15 years ago, so like it's mostly out of my mind. But yet, like, I remember thinking lots of like the vulnerability of birth still exists, like even today and even now, and just being able to realize that that is something that God understands, that Mary went through, that like we already enter into that story even through modern day medicine and everything that surrounds it too.
It's a good segue into the theme for today, the conversation that we want to invite all of us into. It has to do with this idea of annunciation. And when Mary hears this news, it's announced to her. That's that word, annunciation. It's announced to her that she would give birth. And let me read it from Scripture. So this comes from Luke chapter 1. And the story simply says, Gabriel, the angel, Gabriel appeared to her and said, "Greetings, favored woman, the Lord is with you." Confused and disturbed, Mary tried to think what the angel could mean. I mean, we've been kind of talking about this. Imagine that feeling.
You don't always hear confused and disturbed. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be how you'd react? What? What's going on?
That's a good insight. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the ways that, like, speaking of this, like, annunciation, one of the ways that the book and that we're tagging onto, that we're gonna, you might have noticed some of the artwork around us. So each week we're gonna highlight a different piece of artwork. And so today's artwork is this image of annunciation. And in it, you see this image of an angel and Mary. And it has this very, like, feathery look to it that I love. And you'll also notice that some of the coloring in it, it's only colored where it's the divine. So the angel is colored and the baby in Mary's womb is colored and the rest is black and white. And I think that's a beautiful illustration of what Scott Erickson is showing us through this visible artwork. Another thing to notice about it is it really looks very indigenous art inspired. And I think that's a really interesting, whether he meant to do it on purpose or not, I think it's a very interesting thing, because if you think historically of people groups who have been very aware of things happening, I would think of indigenous people, because they're very aware of nature and what's happening in the world, and they would not have missed an annunciation like this. And so just all those ways to think about the artwork, to be able to let it spark your imagination this season of Advent. And then I want to share this reading from the book as well about annunciation. And this takes it and also brings it into our own lives. It says, I presume most of us would invite a divine annunciation, to have something otherworldly being an otherworldly being deliver a message from the Almighty. Sounds like everything we've been hoping for. How often do we anguish over life decisions and direction, and how incredible would it be to receive a definitive answer from the Lord of Lords? It would be the story you would tell over and over again. How you were sitting in the drive-thru line for your iced Americano with cream and 2 pumps of classic syrup, and suddenly a divine voice spoke clear as day, as if through the very drive-thru speaker, and laid out the glorious plan for your life. Or one night, you had a fantastically vivid dream, and when you awoke, you knew with certainty what the next steps were. Or how you tumbled out of a wrecked car on the side of the interstate, lifted by the arms of a stranger who appeared out of nowhere, who told you it was time to do that thing you've been afraid of and have been putting off for years. You turned back to the oncoming fire trucks, and when you turned back to the stranger, he was gone. Oh, it was an angel. Like, what? This would be the thing that people ask you to tell at every dinner party. It would be awesome to have, like, this kind of story in your life.
When I was in children's ministry and we would talk about listening for God's voice, I always said I wish that I would hear God say, Susie, pay attention. But I haven't experienced it like that. Yeah. It's been more gentle nudges that I later realized, oh, that was God talking to me through someone else. So I wish I could have the experience of angels and telling me what to do.
Yeah, don't we? I mean, we do. And yet he goes on in the book to kind of do the flip side of that. Like, we think we want this annunciation. We think we want this very particular, this is what you should do and why you should do it. But he goes on to say, but if I'm honest, I'm actually afraid of revelation. All great stories come at a cost, and the cost of revelation is that it's going to ask something of us. In any divine annunciation, you receive revelation as a gift, yet at the same time, you receive notice that all your planning is ending. It's all over. Everything will change, most of all, you.
That's it. And that is the essence of the Advent story and the Christmas story, is that experience of wanting God's presence, inviting God's presence, and then when it happens, realizing, but it means everything is different. Everything gets changed. My world has been exploded. She said, Mary says at some point, I'm blessed and highly favored. And that became a popular phrase, particularly in African American church context. People would say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. And I'm like, but do we really want to be? Like, what does that really mean?
That involves a lot of risk.
Everything changes.
Yeah. Exactly. There was a part of the book that really resonated with me, and we wanted to highlight this for you, just as you're following along. Scott Erickson said this, and maybe that is a welcome change, as we're thinking about how this annunciation and this revelation changes Mary for our own selves. There's a change that I think God inspires within us, or wants to inspire within us in this season. Maybe that is a welcome change. Maybe you're reading this book and thinking, God, I could use a change. And maybe you're ready for such a transformation. Like, can we be ready for a transformation? Can we prepare ourselves? And maybe that's the whole point of Advent, to begin to prepare ourselves for a transformation, and to experience that in the whole of our lives.
But can you prepare yourself for a big a big transformation like that? I think you have to be you can be open to it and open to change, but it's hard to prepare for something like that.
True story, real quick. So Linda and I had been married for 6 years before we had our first child. We were in grad school, wanted to finish that. Finally, thought we weren't going to be able to conceive because we had problems conceiving for a while. Finally conceived, and the day she came to me in our master bedroom in our first home and said, "Robert, the EPT is positive." And I remember we stood in my master bedroom and danced, like kids. We just were and jumping up and down. Then the time goes forward. She's born. We're sitting in the room, Linda's recovering, and they bring the baby down, and I'm reading the USA Today. So that's 6 years. My Friday was reading the USA Today and New York Times. So I'm sitting there reading the USA Today. They bring Giselle, and they say, "Well, it's time to feed the baby." And I look at them and literally say, "Can't you all feed her down?" And it just hit me like, okay, my days of reading the USA Today and chilling on Friday, that's over. But then at the same time, I was so excited about my first daughter that I had waited so long to have.
This is, I think, a good spot for us to begin to wrap up, because you can walk into this Christmas story and think you know all the details of the Christmas story. Maybe you've been around church for a long time and you've read the story. I know what's going to happen. I've seen the pageant. I know what's going to happen. And yet I think the point of the story is that, one, you can't really fully prepare for what God might announce. And yet we can go through life inviting God into our world to kind of disrupt things. And maybe that's the very disruption that we need. To ask God to change something in our lives, and maybe to go about the work ourselves to bring about that change. And then when it happens, our whole world just blows open. So here's where I'll end. This is from Scott Erickson again, and he wrote in the book, "One who is willing to accept the cost of revelation." On the other side of annunciation, Mary receives this revelation. One who is willing to accept the cost of revelation finds themselves in the deepest of stories that are so mysterious, divine, and human that we still tell them today. This is what happened in the Annunciation. And so what's our Annunciation? What does God want to announce in your life, in my life, and in our lives that changes everything? And if we're real, if we're honest, it's a change that disrupts the whole of our world, but draws us deeper to God. I'll conclude with this benediction. May you receive the light of divine annunciation in the flames of your best laid plans. I want to invite you to join us next week for episode 2 as we continue to talk about an honest